show how I am making my homemade spaghetti sauce. And I've had several people asking me for those recipes, and it's kind of just me throwing some stuff in the pan. So I thought it would be easier for me to show it to you than to tell it to you or write it down for you. So this is for you, Sister Amber, and anyone else who just wants a really great, easy, fast, go-to marinara sauce or spaghetti sauce. So here we go. So what I've got going on right now is, this is my secret weapon. It's a Dutch oven. I have tried several things, and this seems to be what makes my spaghetti sauce taste the best. So I use it every time. I've got a couple tablespoons of olive oil already heating up in there. What else I've got going on, if Maddie can pick up my camera and show you, she's helping me out today, bless her heart. So I've got about 1.5 pounds of ground chuck, and it's already cooking, and I've got that with just some salt and some pepper in there. So I can add that to the spaghetti sauce when I get it done. So the reason why I'm calling it spaghetti sauce instead of marinara sauce is because I make my marinara sauce different. And there's only one difference in that, and I'll use marinara sauce for when I'm making stuffed shells. I don't add a lot of the spices that I add for this. So here we go, and I'll tell you that when we get to that part. So the first thing I'm doing is chopping up some onion. I chop it pretty small because my family doesn't like a whole lot of onion. So I'm only going to end up doing a little bit. But if your family likes a lot of onion, then add as much as you want. So I've got the onions going, and they're in my pan, and they're starting to get a little translucent, and that's what you want. You want your onions to cook down a little bit till they get translucent. Now this is one of the things that I feel like is a great tip and something that takes your spaghetti sauce, over the top. And that's to go ahead and add your spices in now. While the onions are cooking, you're adding them straight into the olive oil, and that brings that flavor out a lot. So you don't have to cook it for hours and hours and hours and hours, but it still tastes like it because you're bringing those spices out. So what I use is just some Italian seasoning that's all in one. You can feel free to separate those out if you want to, but this one's really good for me. It's called Perfect Pinch Italian seasoning. And so I add that very liberally into the pot. No, I do not measure it, but I'm guessing 1 to 2 teaspoons. Easy. So that goes in there with the onions. The next thing that I add, because we like a little bit of spice, is some crushed red pepper. I don't add a whole lot because, again, I have children and they don't do a whole lot of spice. But if you like a lot of spice, then go ahead and kick that up to as much as you want. I add that straight in with the onions. I have also added already some salt and pepper to the onions. And I feel like that's one of the best things that I can do, or that anybody can do while they're cooking, and that's season along the way. Instead of waiting till the end to season, to kind of season every step of what you're doing. So now I've got 2 cloves of garlic. I've crushed one, I'm gonna crush the other. These are really big, so again, along with everything else, feel free to do that according to taste. I love garlic myself, so I add as much as I can to just about anything that I do. So I'm cutting that up really small, like the onion. I don't want big chunks of garlic. So I've got the garlic all minced, or however you want to describe it. And I'm adding that in. Now, most of you know, and if you don't know, garlic cannot overcook. That brings out a kind of bitter taste to garlic. So you want to be ready for your next step very quickly. We add added that in to the onions and the spices, and I'm already getting the nice smell to garlic. It's my favorite thing. And so the next thing I add, I've already opened all the cans so we could skip all the part of the video. And so I add probably about half of a can of tomato paste to mine. You don't have to use tomato paste at all, and I was actually out of it last week, and I had prepared my sauce pretty early, so it didn't matter. As long as it has time to cook down, then you won't miss the tomato paste. But if you're doing it in a hurry and you like your sauce kind of thick, then you're gonna want to use tomato paste. And I just kind of spread that around, get that all with the onions and the spices. Make sure it's kind of cooked down a little bit. I also heard that by cooking the tomato paste, it kind of takes out the bitterness of it, so it's good to add that before you add your tomato sauce or anything like that. So if you add that directly to the oil, that it kind of cooks any bitterness out of it. And I'm explaining this for my daughter too, who's standing right here. So I'm kind of doing two things in one today. I'm teaching my daughter how to make, this is our COVID-19 survival guide. We're doing cooking lessons and anything else that we can do. This is their spring break, so they don't have a whole lot to do, so we're doing some extra little fun things. The next thing that I add in no particular order is I add a can of tomato sauce. And then I do the diced tomatoes. I do the petite diced tomatoes because my family doesn't like big chunks of tomato. If your family likes big chunks of tomatoes, then feel free to add whatever your family likes. Like I said, this is a very customizable recipe to what your family likes, but this sauce is just super flavorful and super easy to do. There's absolutely no reason to buy things in a jar when you can throw this together in less than 10 minutes. So this is the petite diced tomatoes in. And so I have one more thing to add. We have our pound and a half of ground chuck that has already cooked through. I don't cook it 100% through because I want it to finish off in the sauce because I think it gets a little bit of flavor from the meat. So, and then again, if you're not a meat person and you just want to use sauce, then, don't add the meat. And I just drain it while I'm adding it. I don't drain all of the grease from it because, again, I think it adds a little bit of flavor and it'll get super dried out if I completely drain everything. I want it to be a little bit moist and juicy when I'm doing this. So that is it. I have added the ground chuck into my sauce, and I'm gonna have Maddie get the camera and she can show you what the finished product looks like. And it's a super easy, super quick thing to do. Now I'm gonna tell you my last tip, and I heard this from an Italian who makes some amazing sauce, meatballs, something like that. And he said what they like to do, because second day sauce is always the best. It's what I've always heard, what I know, when you eat spaghetti the second day, it's even better than when you ate it the first day. So how do you get that second day taste on the first day? And that's making it as early as possible. And then what I do is I put my oven super low to between 180 and 190. You see my lid over there? I cover, oh, I gotta push start. My oven was beeping. So this has come to a boil, which is great. You want everything to be mixed together before you do this next step. So I have put everything together, put everything in. So we're going to cover it with this grate. And that's another reason why it's important to make it in a Dutch oven, because you can do this last step without transferring it to another pan. And so what I'm gonna do is grab it and put it in my oven at a very, very, very low temp. And that's it. So when we are ready to eat, it is 1:30 right now, and when we're ready to eat at 5:30, this is gonna have a cooked all day, cooked yesterday flavor. And so I hope you enjoy this recipe. I hope that you like it. And I'm gonna show you one more thing before we go. Okay, so this is the last thing that we have with our spaghetti dinner. And it is an absolute must and a favorite with our family. And I discovered this a couple years ago. And this is the best garlic bread ever. The first time I made it, I didn't do so well. I didn't cook it well enough, and so my daughter, or I put too much butter, I forget what I did, but anyways, I put it on the table and my daughter was like, "Oh, this is great grease bread." So I fixed that, and it's not grease bread anymore, it's just garlic bread. So this is half of a loaf of French bread that I get from the Walmart deli. I've also used Italian bread before, and either one, it doesn't matter. Whatever you choose, whatever you find. Nowadays, it's whatever you find at the store. So either one. French bread, Italian bread, go for it. From your grocer's deli, Ingles, Walmart, wherever you go, Publix. So I've got some softened butter. I've cut the loaf in half, my half of loaf in half. Maddie loves me. And I'm just not heavily buttering, but covering each side with the softened butter. Maybe I added too much butter, if there's such a thing. But anyways. And we use real butter, we don't use margarine. It's not even found in my house, so we don't do that. This is unsalted butter. I'm sure that you could use whatever kind you like. And then the next thing that I do is garlic powder. And we use garlic powder so much. This is the size of garlic powder that I buy. And I mean, I just bought it and we've already used half of it. We like garlic, apparently. So I liberally sprinkle that onto each side. And I'm not gonna do this now because we're not ready to eat. So I would put the loaf back together, put it on the baking sheet, and put it in the oven for 10 minutes like it is at, I think, 350. Then when it comes out, you open it back up, sprinkle shredded cheese of any kind that you like, whether it's mozzarella, the cheddar, whatever you like. I just use whatever I have. And I sprinkle that on either side, leave it open, put it back in the oven at 350 for 5 minutes, and then voila, you have the most amazing garlic bread ever. We slice it and we go to town on it, and usually there are fights for who gets the last piece. So I hope you enjoyed our spaghetti dinner from the Causey family. This is a recipe that my family loves, and I hope your family does too. Love y'all. Bye.